district, you know the Pope listens. Dynasty, our religion, for the blokes missing. On all of these trades, on all of these plays, on all of these grades. By the end of the day, y'all getting played. So, what you gonna do next? Try to fill up that flex? Send the homie a text? That trash offer's the best? You try to make it complex, then they text you back. Now all of a sudden they don't make any sense. Broaden your horizons, boy. Dynasty's not for the Simons, boy. These trades not for consignment, boy. Respect your opponent, y'all some piranhas, boy. This my advice, from me to you. Open up your cute little podcast queue. Search up GOAT District, my dude. Pop it in your ear, man, y'all know what to do. It's the... And I always be traded. And I always be traded. And I always be trading. Y'all try to betray them, but first you gotta bait them. Fish.
All right, welcome everybody. Theo, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm starting waivers, so that's always a little fun.
I want to know how many people in these 4 boxes were quickly doing waivers for one team while the intro was running.
I was just looking at my waivers right now, so full disclosure, guys, I was thinking about a Darrell Williams bid amount. I know Michael's got a couple of tabs open right now. How about you, Matt?
I do not, but I usually start putting guys in for $1 because you got to put the $1 bids on like late Sunday night or Monday morning when I have some time over some coffee. I try and do that. So I try and start the process a little early. And, so by the time you get to Wednesday or Tuesday night like now, you pretty much have an idea and you just got to figure out those prices. That's usually the toughest part.
Yeah,
100%.
For sure. Well, we're going ahead and getting going here. JD is having some technical difficulties, so hopefully he'll be able to join us later. But Theo, why don't you introduce everybody to our guest today, and we'll just start firing right in there because we got a lot to cover.
So I'm really excited for tonight's show. This is our first high stakes roundtable of the season. Post New York Super Draft, Nelson Sousa and Chris Vaccaro came on, and it was really nice to have 2 different voices at once. Today, we're really fortunate to have probably the 2 best New Jersey-based, although Matt is not New Jersey anymore, the 2 best New Jersey-based high-stakes fantasy football players in the country, in my estimation. We have Matt Modica, who's one of the best football/baseball guys going, extremely successful drafter in both. And we have Michael Edelman, who I'm in too many leagues with, and he's probably one of the best drafters I'd say of anybody in high stakes. So welcome to the show, guys. You've both been in the district before, but this is the first time you guys have been on together. How are both of your teams doing so far, and how are both of you guys feeling about the way you approach drafts? Maybe Matt, you could take that question first.
Sure. First, I'm honored to be on with Mike. He's a great guy, Hall of Famer, and I'm definitely thrilled to be back on the district. I'm so happy you guys invited me last year and to come back on early on. This is like such a great time, with the 2 weeks, the overreactions of week 1, and then you see the zeros turn to heroes and the heroes turn to zeros in week 2. As far as it goes, it's been pretty much a mixed bag. I have a couple of teams that, I'm really excited for. My 0-1 teams, most of them got to 1-1 this week. I think I have maybe 2 0-2 teams, so that's not good. One team might have got a death nail this week, scoring like 59 points in a super is never going to help you. You're going to need a couple of 200, point weeks, and you're going to need them fast. But I guess the bright side is it happened in week 2, so there is still plenty of time. But that's never a good thing. But yeah, overall, I'm happy. I like my teams. I'd say the biggest issues I've had in the teams that aren't off to say the start I wanted are maybe the J.K. Dobbins teams with Kyle Pitts. And I know it's going to be a question, one of the last questions, but I'll put a little spoiler alert out there. I still think J.K. Dobbins will be a league winner at the end of the season. I think that's going to be one of the most lethal offenses we will see going forward, especially with that depleted secondary and the disaster that is.
Yeah, we had the Miami Baltimore game was just incredible for fantasy. How about you, Michael? How are your teams doing? I know you went wide receiver heavy in a lot of your builds, and it seems like it's been the right year for that so far.
Yeah. Thanks again for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here, and I feel like Matt and I get paired up a lot. It seems. I think last year we got paired up with Nelson and Matty Davis too on one of their shows, so it's always fun being with Matt. So I was talking to Dan earlier. I try not to get too overexcited or look at my teams, early in the year. I mean, I have a general feel that I have a lot of the players that have been doing well, but I also have a good amount of the players who have been putting up goose eggs. So, but I did take a look, and I think I'm off to a decent start. I think I have 2 prime times like in the top 15, and I think I have an FFPC main that's 35th right now. So, I mean, overall, I think it's a good spot to be in right now. Like you said, with I try. It's funny that historically I've always been, and Matt was always one of the first people to say this. Like when he would see the stickers, it would always be yellow, right? But I've changed over the years, and even this year, I mean, maybe some of the drafts you've been in with me have been like the New York Super was wide receiver.
You had a couple of robust RB teams.
I did.
Teams.
Yeah. So I definitely had a little of everything. But of course, like the prototypical builds that you like the best that I like the best are more wide receiver heavy for sure.
And Dan, we're off to a good start in our super and our varsity that we're sharing with Andrew Schellenberg.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. Really like where we're sitting. I mean, we're in second place, but just an eyelash out of first in the super. And Chad had a monster week to fairly convincingly take first place in the varsity. But our team is still better than his, so I'm not too worried.
We're coming for you. We're coming for you, Chad, in that varsity. You're gonna be thinking about the GOAT District all season long. So we want to just dive into it tonight. This is a roundtable discussion. So the 4 of us are kind of share our answers, and I'm interested to hear some of your responses. We didn't share any answers, in the show chat. So this is going to be very interesting. One offense that's out to a lightning quick start is the Detroit Lions. They've scored 35 and 36 points to start the season. Dating back to last year, they now have scored 29 or more points in 5 out of their last 6 games. It's just remarkable, the turnaround there in Detroit. DeAndre Swift and Amon-Ra St. Brown are currently top 5 at their position. Can the Lions sustain this? Mm-hmm. Is this the offense that people should have taken more shots on? Maybe share your thoughts, and maybe share your thoughts on Jared Goff as a streamer as well. Why don't we start with Michael for this one?
Yeah. So I mean, listen, I think the two players in Swift and Amon-Ra St. Brown, right? I mean, they're talented at this point. I think we know that, and they're going to be good. And with the game scripts they're going to be in, whether they're leading or whether they're coming back, I think there's going to be fantasy points there to be had, right? I think. I'm definitely sold on Amon-Ra St. Brown now after seeing him continue to do this. I was definitely a skeptic, I think, at the beginning of the draft season. But as the draft season moved on, I started kind of getting more and more on board with him. Similarly with Swift. He got steamed up, I think, a little early, and I didn't get enough of him. But the talent's there with him. It's about health, I think, and staying on the field. He's like Austin. I compare him to Austin Eckler. I think they're very similar, where he doesn't need the 75-80% snap shares to produce. But yeah, I think they're going to produce, right? I think all year, I think they'll only get better when they get like Jameson Williams back, and they get some of these other guys going. So yeah, I think they're here to stay.
For me, I actually believe in them for a lot of the same points Michael just made. But I think their new OC really seems to be doing a very good job. Their offensive line is stout, and they were missing guys this week, and they were still manhandling people. So, I mean, that's got to bode well going forward. As far as Amon-Ra St. Brown, I mean, you just have to give it to this guy. I don't know what more we need to see. He's basically in his last 8 games has 5 top 6 finishes, a top 9, a top 12, and a top 26. I mean, it's if you're a skeptic, I really don't have I don't have him this year. He wasn't one of my top targets, so that was a big whiff on me. I do like, I got the Jalen Waddles at that range, the Batemans, Deontay Johnson, who I still think if he can get, Kenny Pickett in there, maybe he's just, I think Deontay Johnson is all world, and we kind of see that every week. But as far as the Lions go, yeah, those are the reasons there. And DeAndre Swift for me would be RB1 if he could just finish off these runs and didn't have the vulture named Jamal Williams, excuse me. And because I mean, he reminds me, or is one of the closest things I've seen since Jamal Charles. I'm mainly worried about him being able to stay healthy throughout the course of the season, but I'm extremely excited. I know me and Andy have him in the ultimate 14-team ultimate. I got him with a couple of Barkley teams, one on the FFPC. I dipped my toe into that this year for the main event. We'll see how that works out. I was a little foreign to that format, and I have him in some NFC teams as well. So I'm really excited about that. And Jared Goff, I know, there's really 2 is not really available. He's available in one of my primetime leagues. Someone dropped him for the Giants defense. But Jared Goff, I mean, not that you want to use him. You really want to have you're planning on having a better option if you make it to the promised land, the playoffs. But that playoff schedule is pretty damn sweet.
Dan, anything to add on the Lions?
Yeah, not really. I mean, I'm with both of these guys. I'm definitely in on both of them. I think that they're they're for real. With that defense being as bad as it is in Detroit and the offensive line being as good as it is, it's not hard to see why this is working out. What really makes me mad is that I basically got completely shut out on Amon-Ra St. Brown in my most expensive leagues, and I had to go back in and look. Like after this past week, I was like, I need to understand why I didn't get any of them. And as it turns out, it was like basically I didn't have any picks until, I mostly had picks at the end of the 4th round where he was already gone. Mm-hmm. So I was picking at the beginning of the 3rd round and at the end of the 4th round. And it was just a matter of that in the NFFC, I had picks more towards the back end of the draft, and the FFPC, I had picks more to the front end of the draft, which with the 3rd round reversal, it just kind of works out that that means you're going to miss the front of the 4th round in both setups. And there was only one place where I could have gotten him, and I passed on him for Gabe Davis, which I'm definitely regretting on that one.
Can I jump in 1 second before we say hi to Gabe Davis?
Go ahead.
On what Dan said, I think is a really key point in high stakes, whether it's baseball, football, whatever you're playing. Like we'll play in whatever draft champions or best ball leagues, and you'll look, after and then we go live for the higher stakes formats. But then you'll look at the end and you'll see your number of shares. Like, wow, I got like 12 shares of this guy or this or that. But if you don't have them in the really important leagues where it matters most, it's like you're really out. Like you really didn't get those guys. You know what I'm saying? And that's one of the things I've tried to learn in playing with baseball and with football is you got to make sure to get those guys, because once you go live, like once you move from July into like late August when we start playing prime times or main events, the board's going to shrink even more. As hard as that's to believe, but it does. And you got to get your guys. I know it's a cliche, but it really is true.
Yeah,
no,
totally.
for sure.
And part of the thing is I don't have as many of the really high stakes wins as some of you guys, where you're running, a dozen prime times or whatever, and so you have several opportunities at them. When I'm running, I probably had 8 total high stakes weeks, and I mean, like I say, I only had a shot at him once and I didn't take him. So, but one of the things I do, Matt, is I look at my exposures by the amount of dollars of my entry fee that are tied up in each player rather than like how many different leagues, And I think that's definitely the better way to look at it. Because I look at some players and I've got like, boy, that was weird. Okay, I've got like, I've got them in like 6 or 7 leagues, but only one of them's a high stakes league. So it looks like I've got a ton of them, but I actually don't because they're lower dollar leagues, the $350 leagues instead of the $1,600 leagues.
And shout out to Dalton Cates, who's been on the show a number of times. He tweeted something today that this is historical what Amon-Ra St. Brown's doing, but a day 3 wide receiver drafted at age 21 or 22 in their first 19 career games. Amon-Ra St. Brown now has more PPR points than Tyreek Hill and Stephon Diggs did in their first 19 games. So it's a truly historical thing. I agree with you guys that Jameson Williams, I think, opens up this offense even further. So it's going to be super interesting with how we see them finish the year. And a huge game with Minnesota. Garrett Wilson had a massive game this past weekend. Drake London had his coming out party. Jahan Dotson has been tremendous. It's another year where rookie wide receivers are going to be very impactful to how fantasy football teams do. We've also seen Chris Olave flash, Treylon Burks flash. I mean, the list goes on and on. It's like the 3rd season in a row that we've seen this. What are your expectations for the rookie wide receivers moving forward? And is there maybe one that you're looking to break out that maybe hasn't? Start with Michael on this one.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because going into the season, I always you want to every year it seems like you're going, it was the 3rd year breakout, then it was the 2nd year breakout, now it's the rookie wide receivers breaking out. And Garrett Wilson and Drake London in particular, right? Like they've already flashed and broken out, and I think Drake London for sure with his draft capital and him being like the only wide receiver on the whole roster, like he's going to get his share. The Garrett Wilson one really was eye-opening for me this week. Now I liked him coming in, but I also love Elijah Moore. So it's kind of hard for me to kind of see it happening. But watching a little bit of that game, he's the real deal, right? Like he's not going anywhere. I think he's here to stay. Now it's just a matter of can the Jets figure out how to open up the offense, and they have talent on that offense, right? And now, like to me, the real thing with him is he's going to get a worse quarterback, in my opinion. So when Zach Wilson comes back, is he going to be able to get the ball to him? At least Flacco's a gunslinger. I think he's going to get the ball out there. So that's at least in that circumstance to see how that's going to work out. In terms of guys that could break out down the line. I mean, I was really high coming in on George Pickens. I feel like he's somebody that as the season progresses, I think we'll get down the line. We'll get his chance, and hopefully he'll be someone we see break out, down into the season.
How about you, Matt?
I mean, in draft season, for me, the obvious one, just for the open targets there, was Drake London. I mean, the draft capital, which obviously isn't so obvious when you look at Kyle Pitts and his usage. But, I mean, Drake London, to me, seemed like a guy that, as long as he was healthy, I think that was the major concern because he had the knee issue in the first preseason game. And, as I look at the guys, like Dotson, to me, this guy looks like a bowler. But I think the problem there, I think he hurts Terry McLaurin more than anything. I mean, Curtis Samuel has out-targeted him 2-1. Curtis Samuel has like 15 catches to Dotson and McLaurin combined for like 12. And I think Dotson can continue to grow. He looks the part, but somebody's going to take a hit. And I kind of think it'll more be McLaurin than Curtis Samuel. But the other thing is, can Curtis Samuel stay on the field? That's always been an issue for him. Chris Olave, we saw all the air yards. Some of them are prayer yards, too. I know on Twitter you brought that up. And
I sure did. I love air yards, man. I love them.
No, I mean, look, at some point, if he's going to keep throwing at these depths of targets, I mean, he's going to connect. And, Jameis, he's famous for that 30-30 season. But I think there's other guys. I mean, Michael mentioned Pickens, and the guy's running all the routes, which to me isn't always a great sign. Like everybody he's running 90% routes. Like MSV runs 90% routes, but he's basically, running dead routes. He's just taking guys deep so they can work out other guys throughout the field. And on his team, I think Sky Moore is somebody that hasn't done really anything so far this year. But, after week 1, when everybody crowned Kansas City, is just, Kansas City's going to be even better. Week 2 happened, and look, Mahomes is great. That pass to Watson was phenomenal. But he got lucky on a couple of plays. There should have been some picks there and all that. So I think at some point Sky Moore is going to be needed on that team. And lastly, even a guy like Treylon Burks, who might, we're seeing him getting these targets. That offense has nobody. I mean, Robert Woods is coming off an ACL. The kid Phillips, I think, has a future in this league as like an Edelman or a what's the guy on the Raiders? Is slipping my mind.
Renfro.
Adams. Renfro.
Or like a Renfro type, but there's really nobody out there in that passing game. So I don't see how at some point he fails, So I think you have to be excited. And for me, like it happened a couple of years back in baseball where you saw all these younger guys that never got promoted before are getting promoted. And this seems to be the trend in the NFL the last few years. I mean, I know last year we had to wait a game or two, and then Justin Jefferson burst on the scene. But this seems to be the way. And, I mean, Garrett Wilson's a top 10 pick. So, I mean, I'm Michael. I was thinking it was going to be more Elijah Moore, and hopefully they both can eat. But what's going to happen when Zach Wilson comes?
And then, Dan, how are we supposed to keep Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave on the bench and on our super team now? That how are we supposed to do it after 30 points, man?
Bench Jefferson.
Yeah, that's going to be a difficult one for sure. There's a problem of having too many wide receivers. No, I don't worry about that. That's we have on our, I think it's our varsity team, we have like 7 wide receivers that are all startable. And that you really don't want to hold any of them out of your lineup. So that's a good problem to have.
Rich man problems.
Yes, we'll figure it out. But I was really pushing hard on the rookie wide receivers this year. I'm just going to throw something up on the screen real quick here. And
hold on, I got
all
you.
Right. Let's see. Well, there we go. That's what we're trying to get to. Okay, so
you make it a little bigger. If you can, if not,
this one.
Oh, there you go. Beautiful.
Okay, there you go. So anyway, you can see out of my top 5 wide receivers, 4 of them are rookies as far as like what my ownership percentage is. I went really heavy on those guys. You go down a little bit further, you'll also find Jahan Dotson is in there as well. Just a little bit further down than this, not showing some Garrett Wilson. So, I just liked where those guys were going in drafts. It made a lot of sense to me to be grabbing these rookie wide receivers rather than old, tired veterans that, just really, I didn't think really had much of a chance to be league winners. And so, I'm like, at this point, I'm shooting for all upside there. And, I've got my guys that I'm really counting on to start already in the bag. And so, this is like my 4th or 5th wide receiver that I'm rostering here.
Yeah, I think that's the correct strategy. We've seen now 3 years in a row where these wide receivers that are drafted early are beating their ADP and potentially crushing it. I thought Matt brought up a great point on Sky Moore. Sky Moore is kind of like a forgotten man right now, but the fact that a Kansas City wide receiver has not emerged is a great thing for him. And I think that one of the best arguments for both him and Pacheco this week, seeing literally no work, was that it was a short week. And those guys need the mental preparation. They need plays put in for them. But you could see a scenario where Sky Moore is like emerges in week 9 or 10, and you've got somebody you can start in the playoffs in these high stakes formats. So I would not go out there and cut Sky Moore by any means. These guys look very, very good to me. Garrett Wilson, I think the thing that Garrett Wilson shows us, and we often talk dynasty, in the GOAT district is landing spot doesn't matter. If you're a baller, you're a baller. And I think people avoided Garrett Wilson for the wrong reasons. The Jets factor, the fact that Elijah Moore was there.
Like Dotson. It was the same with Dotson, right? They were falling late in the first, late, and then even in the second in Dotson's case. And it's just because their jerseys are ugly, so people don't see that same upside.
Yeah, and you saw the same argument happen with DK Metcalf and AJ Brown when they came in the league. Where guys were like, this is not the ideal scenario. But it doesn't matter. In the NFL, if you can play, you can play. You're seeing rookies make impacts year in, year out. It's
hey,
just a
Theo,
great way of going
Theo,
about it.
I'm old enough to remember OBJ 2015 taking me to football, guys. I got the proof right here. Won the league, almost took that bad boy down. And let's not forget Juju. Same thing as a rookie. Guys picking him off waivers. So don't let these rookies sit on your waiver wire, guys, whether they popped yet or not, because this is how you win these big tournaments, is having these guys, like Dan said, as your wide receiver 6. And next thing you know, he's taking you to the promised land.
Well, just going back to like Dan was showing the guys that he's invested in. At that point in the draft, I mean, you're either if you started out like say wide receiver heavy, you're either investing in the zero RB backs, these pass catching type guys that you're trying to, roster and stuff, or you're making that decision between these rookie guys or say like the Julio Jones, who I'll admit Julio, I've always been a fan, but I mean, he's another year older. He's in a good spot, but the problem consists again that can he stay on the field? I mean, maybe Tampa's like 2 years ago by like week 8, everything meshes or as the season goes on and Julio's crushing, but he's always had that problem. But you're looking at some of these guys, that's where you were eating. So I think when you're looking at that or like a Jarvis Landry type who will have those weeks, but I think Jarvis Landry is going to be third in that pecking order on that team. So I'd rather have, like you say, you'd rather have your starters, and then hopefully these guys you drafted as your, 4, 5, 6s, you can implement them middle of the season and down that stretch run, and they could really, if you need them, can help you out.
No, absolutely. The rookie wide receivers are exciting, but what's a little less exciting is my Travis Etienne shares. Michael, how surprised are you at the Jacksonville running back pecking order right now? James Robinson is just an incredible comeback story here off of injury. He looks like a man possessed. Do you think that this story has been written, or do you see that this narrative is still playing out? Do you expect big weeks from Travis Etienne? Should he be on our bench at this point? What's your approach to this Jacksonville backfield?
No, I think. Well, I think this is what the backfield is going to be as long as both are healthy, right? I mean, listen, we all know Robinson's a good player. We've seen it, right? He's done it. Yes, he's coming back from injury, and maybe we do this to ourselves all the time, right? Where we want the shiny new toy, and we kind of poo-poo the incumbent who's there. I think that they can both succeed, right? Like, what's the story in week 1 if Etienne catches that pass and runs it in for a touchdown, right? So I definitely think they can. Now, is he going to be like the RB1 that everyone expected or wants him to be? I don't know if that'll happen this year, but I definitely think he's still startable. You're not benching him. You're playing him. And I think he can still be very productive. It's just a matter of them, getting in the right game flows and having him, we haven't really seen that, seen the game flow yet where they're down big and he's going to be in there and as the catching passes and in comeback mode. That's, I think, when we'll start to see him come through a little more.
Is injury? Sorry, Theo, with the way James Robinson started, I'm just here to interrupt questions, by the way. With the way James Robinson started, is the only way we see Etienne hit kind of that ceiling with an injury to be the running back, or what do you guys think?
I don't think so, actually. I mean, look, I didn't think he'd be this healthy or look this good. That first game, he looked great, plowing into the end zone. He had that big run in week 2. But if we go back to week 1, the pass that, Etienne was wide open in the end zone. It was overthrown ridiculously. He dropped another touchdown. So that was the 2 touchdown game that never was. I don't think James Robinson's going away. It has flipped right now, but it's a long season. James Robinson, I mean, this weekend rushed 23 times for like 67 yards, and one of them was the 37-yard run. You take that run out, it's like 22 carries for like 27 yards. And, it's a great story, and he is a really good player. But I think ETN is far from dead. We've seen some flashes. It may take some time. And, I'll look at another situation if you want to look at like the Jets. I mean, Breece Hall, it's going to take a little time, but I think at some point that guy's going to be a hammer. And he's going to win people weeks this year.
So two buy candidates right there.
Oh, yeah, I would. I don't really play in trade leagues. I'm in one home league with a friend, but I would sell high on James Robinson if I could. I think the problem with that is his draft status, like where he went in drafts. In home leagues, it's mostly people always going to look at that, and they're going to say I'm not going to trade a third rounder for a 12th rounder or something like that. So.
Yeah.
So ETN, it's difficult for me because I'm a big fan of the talent, and I think that he has had only 18 touches in the first 2 games. But I think that the weeks are coming still. I don't believe that Robinson can hold up with the type of volume that we saw him have last week. And I think that the Doug Peterson offense is also still a bit evolving. So I think that I agree with Michael. I don't think the story is yet to be told. I do think you can comfortably put James Robinson in your lineup this weekend and treat him as an RB2. But ETN would be a guy I'd prefer to have. When possible, I prefer to have him in the flex than on my bench because I feel like there's a chance that we're leaving big points on the board. How about you, Dan? Oh, Dan's muted.
I'm he's got a bit of a whizzing in the background, so I just mute him when he's not on. Sorry, buddy. Here we go.
All right.
There you go.
All right. So I have 0.0% of James Robinson. That was by design. I'm just not going to bet on somebody recovering from an Achilles. At the running back position, we just really haven't seen any great examples of it yet. I mean, the best one I can come up with is Donta Foreman. And, maybe next year I would have thought about it, but this year there was no way I was doing it. I'm very happy for James Robinson. Super happy that he's recovered this well. It's fantastic to see. My 21% shares of ETN are not loving it so much, and as somebody who's just kind of watching the game, to me it looks like, unless you're talking about short yardage carries, every carry that they give to James Robinson is just a gift to the opposing defense because it's not going to ETN. I think ETN's got a ton more juice. They should be giving him probably 2/3 of the carries and just use James Robinson to kind of change up the pace and be the short yardage guy. But
sounds like Dallas. Sounds like the Cowboys right now.
Yeah, I'm not in charge, so it is what it is for now. But I haven't given up on ETN. I'm still putting him in my lineup in most places unless I have a really, really good option to use instead.
Sticking with the running back position, we've seen Najee Harris, Derrick Henry, and Dalvin Cook very slow out the gates. Derrick Henry, we all saw the Bills game where it looked like he was stuck in the mud. Game 1 was not so good for him either. Najee Harris has been slightly better, and Dalvin Cook will kind of give him the benefit of the doubt. Which guy are you most concerned about based on where you took them at ADP? And which guy do you think could end up paying dividends throughout the season? Maybe, Matt, you could start with this one.
I think you have to be concerned with Henry right now, just as I was touching on. That offense is just terrible. Outside of him, they got rid of A.J. Brown. Like I said, Burks could be a good player eventually, but there's really no one to put fear into defenses. You got Ryan Tannehill, who had a couple of really nice years for the Titans, but that ship has sailed. I'm sure we'll be seeing the rookie in there a lot more going forward. Cook, you have to, I would say, probably have the most optimism for, because after week 1, everybody was in love with the Vikings. The Vikings were possibly, going to the Super Bowl. And I still think they have a really good team. Darius Slay just destroyed things for them last night. And it was just a bad game on the road. And as great as the Eagles look right now, too, the Eagles are going to have a bad game in the next couple of weeks. And my Bills got lucky in that first half because there was a lot of like 3rd down and 1s or 4th and 1s that they didn't execute on. I know they're missing Gabe Davis. But if they played a real team, like a really good team or a team with a really good quarterback or offense, that would have been a much more competitive game. They were able to take a 10-point lead and then blow them out in the second half. But, yeah, I would be really concerned about Henry. And I think Cook, they'll get that right. I think they have a lot of weapons there. They have a good head coach. It's still early for them, like I said. It's a new regime, so you might have a couple of weeks here or there.
Well, your Bills will get a tough one this weekend against that resurgent Miami team. That'll be a fun game.
That will be.
How about you, Mike? Where are you at with these 3 backs? Who are you most concerned about, and who are you most optimistic about?
Yeah, very similar to what Matt said. I would say, I mean, I was totally off the Najee train this year, so like to me, like he was my number 1 get last year. Like, so that's the diff. Like you have to every year is different, so you have to know when to kind of get on and get off the train with some of these guys. And I just didn't like, I didn't like what I saw out of Najee last year, even though he had really good numbers. He looked slow. The line's terrible. The quarterback situation's not the best. And he's hurt. On top of it, we already know he's hurt. And I don't know what happened, but I don't know when we were in Vegas and we saw him rolling around on the ground in week 1, like I looked over at Glenn Lowy, right? Because he was sitting like near us, and he's a huge Najee owner this year. And he picked him right in front of me in the New York Super, and I was just like, that doesn't look good. And I don't know if he shot himself up or something to play this week, but like something's wrong there, and I would be really concerned about him. Like, I don't think he's making it through the season, honestly. And that's why, and Theo, you know this well, my number 1 owned player is Jaylen Warren, because I just didn't believe in Najee this year.
Shout out to Michael in a primetime in New York, where Najee fell to me at the 3:02, and I was feeling so proud of myself. And then Michael sniped me on Jaylen Warren, so that was awesome. It was a really tremendous pick. And I did the revenge Mark Ingram snipe for his Alvin Kamara pick, but that didn't work out. So
right.
Hat tip for you, Mike.
But then, Theo, you cut him and let me pick him up this week for when Kamara didn't play. Not that it did anything for me. It got me 2 points, but at least I had the option.
Yeah, 100%. That was just a pure tilting, 15th round tilt move. How about you, Dan? Who are you? I mean, I know Dan's answer on this, but maybe how concerned would you be if you had Derrick Henry? And I'll also add, since you're a big dynasty guy, Dan, as well, would you be selling low in dynasty right now and just trying to abandon ship?
Yeah, I have no Henry and I have no Najee in my redraft. I don't have either of them in dynasty either. I never was convinced about Najee even coming out. Last year would have definitely been nice to have him, just like Mike was saying, this year I didn't want any part of what he was doing in that offense behind that line. And when all of a sudden it started coming out that he was having some kind of a Liz Frank issue, and we were hearing that like a week or so before the season started, that just put me, I just crossed him out in red. I was just like, I don't even want it anymore. And as Matt was saying, too, that you want to make your bet the other way. So if you're totally betting against Najee Harris, you better have a lot of Jaylen Warren. If you're totally betting against Derrick Henry, you better have a lot of That's
an interesting one, though. Are you done? Is it Hilliard or Hassan Haskins? Because it's like, that's interesting to me, because I think that Hilliard had the big week 1, but if Derrick Henry was to go down, would you see Hassan Haskins, get 15 carries a game, and how much would that be worth in that Titans offense? So it's a weird one trying to fade him.
Yeah. That's one of those places where I was taking some of Hilliard, I was taking some of Haskins. It just kind of depended on who was available to me and which drafts, and at what point I was looking to make that pick, because a lot of times Haskins was going a little bit before Hilliard, and then after week 1, people were all picking up Hilliard, and so right now I think everybody's going to be picking up Haskins because I think he got dropped in quite a few places as well.
Two offenses that well, first off, we'll start with the quarterback position. Carson Wentz and Tua Tagovailoa are currently both top 6 in quarterback scoring, FFPC and NFFC. Last week, Tua had a 6-touchdown game. Carson Wentz, I believe, has 7 touchdown passes on the season and over 85 pass attempts. So right now, how do you guys view those two quarterbacks? Can we trust them as streamers? Are they potentially top 12 quarterbacks? And then a follow-up question would be, what are your expectations for the Miami and Washington offenses rest of the season? Start with Matt on this one.
Well, I mean, as far as Miami goes, with those weapons, it's the two weapons we see in Hill and Waddle, but the head coach, I think, really makes a difference here. When you see these teams that get coaches, the Giants finally got a coach. It's been like forever for them to have a coach. And, you see the difference between like Matt Rule and what he's doing in Carolina and, what's going on in Miami right now. And look, again, they were aided by secondary issues with the Ravens. I mean, there was some just blown coverage. I mean, Tyreek Hill, he can blow past DBs. That's obvious. But there was there was no coverage on at least one of those deep plays. And Jalen Waddle, I think for a lot of people, if you got the depressed draft day value because he wasn't practicing for a couple of weeks, I mean, he's one of the most exciting year 2 players out there. I mean, you see that speed. You saw it in week 1 on that pass he caught over the middle. So I think, you really have to be more in on Tua, obviously. I don't think that's saying anything like that. He was dropped in that one prime time. I'm very curious to see where he goes on Wednesday night, how much he goes for, I should say. As far as Wentz goes, I mean, I think he's garbage. I think he's probably better than Matt Ryan, though. So I don't know if the Colts made
100% better than Matt Ryan.
Yeah, I don't know if the Colts made the right move there. But the thing about being garbage, like garbage time, it still counts the same. Those points count the same in fantasy as other times. And he has 3 weapon wide receivers. You got McKissick. I mean, Gibson, we saw week 1. He's a much better pass catcher. Everybody, I think we're all comfortable with that at this point. And I don't know how long his shelf life is if Brian Robinson comes back in a month. But I mean, I don't know if he's a top 12 Wentz. I wouldn't put him there. I'd rather have Goff if I had to choose from the two. But he's going to score points at times. It's just they're going to be down. It's not a good team. But Tua, I don't think Tua thought he could throw for 469 yards or whatever it was. But I think as everybody's got to be excited about what's going to go forward with this Miami offense.
Michael?
Yeah, so I agree with a lot of what Matt said there. I think Tua, you have to be in on Tua. I think, with the coach there, with the weapons, I think he's there to stay for sure. I could see him finishing as overall like QB1 top 12 quarterback with the way that's going. And Wentz, I was thinking about this one. A good comparison for Wentz, I feel like, is Blake Bortles.
Boom.
Like, I feel like that's the comparison. He's having good games. Yes, he could still have some, but I agree with Matt. I think he's not a good quarterback overall, and I think he has some good weapons, so he'll put up some games, but he's definitely not somebody I would trust. I saw someone in the chat posted something about picking him up for Dak. I think, yeah, like if you get someone, you got to hope he can do this for a couple more weeks, right? And then I think you'll be okay there. And in terms of the offenses in general, again, not to belabor the same points, but 100% agree with Matt. I think Miami's weapons are really good. They made the right moves. They went out and got guys. They brought in a coach that actually knows how to use the weapons, which I think is key. And in Washington, who knows? Like I think it's been a little fool's gold in the first couple weeks, right? Mm-hmm. I think we've seen over the past couple years, like, I don't think the coaching staff there really knows what's going on or knows how to use everyone the right way, considering what they've botched up with all their running backs over the years. So I'm not too keen on them going forward. I think they'll slow down as we move through the season.
I'll say Logan Thomas also helps a lot. It looks like he's kind of fully back. So Wentz, I think we'll know a lot more after this week. They play that Philadelphia defense. It is a short week for Philly, and the game is in Washington. But if he comes out and throws for another 300 yards and 3 touchdown passes against that defense, then I think it's something we need to keep an eye on. And I did use Wentz this past weekend on a couple of DAC spots, and he came through for me. So I won't talk trash about you for a whole week, Carson Wentz, because he helped my fantasy team win. Dan, and I agree with you guys on that Miami offense. Those 2 wide receivers are the real deal. So it's, the whole narrative about Jalen Waddle regressing, write down the analysts who told you that this past summer. And I'll tell you, there's not one of us in the GOAT district was ever off of Waddle. We've been steadfast in our love for Jalen Waddle all summer long. We had a couple of guests who came on and told us that was their fade. We'll just keep that one in the back of our mind, with all due respect to those guys. Dan, anything to add on these 2 offenses?
Not really much. I mean, I think, everybody's waiting for the wheels to fall off on Carson Wentz. As far as the Miami offense, I definitely had it totally backwards. I was expecting, the run game to be what really took off, and, for the passing game to kind of work off of that a little bit, and it seems to be, that they know what their main weapons are, and those are the wide receivers, with Waddle and Hill, and they're using those as much as possible. And so I think that's going to definitely keep Tua chugging along pretty good. I wouldn't put either of them as top 12 quarterbacks, really, but Tua is probably closer to top 12 than Wentz for me.
JD, would you trade Matt Ryan for Carson Wentz right now for your Indianapolis Colts?
I would trade Matt Ryan for a bag of pucks right now, as we say up here north of the border. I'm a bitter Colts fan because as a Leafs fan, and if anyone follows hockey, you know how the Leafs back in the day, they used to take stars like past their primes, like way past their primes. And I feel like that's what, a management that looked really strong in Indy, the mistakes that they've kind of made at quarterback. Look, it's 2 weeks in. You hope this turns around, but the first 2 weeks were so bad in Houston and Jacksonville, like 2 teams that they should easily beat. I made the mistake of saying they could challenge the Bills, to get to the bowl this year, and it's not even close. I was right on Philly, but definitely not with the Colts. They have a lot of work to do. Obviously, they were missing a lot of weapons, as we talked about in our chat. Granson and Doolin were good pickups last week, just to kind of put at the end of your bench and kind of use them as these injuries maybe linger. But I'm not encouraged by what I see in Indy so far. I hope it turns around, and if not, heads have to roll, because this has been it's been too long now that this has been kind of dragging.
Well, I got a question since we're talking about Matt Ryan. And like you said, week 1, they faced the Texans, which I thought would be a much easier game for them. And Michael Pittman ate, and he ate well. But that was on like 50 pass attempts. And like going forward, is there any concern for Pittman with Matt Ryan, possibly being washed? And if the game script doesn't allow it, or the pass attempts, how is he going to eat is basically my question.
Well, I'll say that I think the Michael Pittman is it's kind of like what we talked about on the GOAT District all summer, where we all love Pittman, and I drafted Pittman in the New York Super with Michael. I think we took him like 18th overall, but I just think that he lacks wide receiver 1 overall upside. I think that he gets held back by that, and people say, well, of course he won't be wide receiver 1 overall, but when you're drafting a guy in the 2nd round, you hope he has that range of outcomes. I think he's super safe. I think he's going to be one of the top targets per game wide receivers there are. I think that anytime he's on the field for Indianapolis, he's going to get double-digit targets, and he's a good enough player to produce. But I don't really worry so much. I just think that you have to be realistic that he doesn't have the same range of outcomes like a Stephon Diggs does. That's kind of my approach. Anything different with that, Mike or Dan or JD?
No.
I agree with that, and that's kind of I think how we were drafting. As much as I love my Colts and I love Pittman and JT, I could never pull the trigger on Pittman because of the opportunity cost and who he's going around. And now we see it. We see Hill popping. We see Diggs kind of going even above ADP where he was going at the end of the first. So I'm looking through my ownership. I do not have a lot of Pittman this year.
Well, Pittman versus AJ Brown and Tyreek Hill will come down to it because I think that was for FFPC drafters. That was you draft a running back at the 101, and then at the 2-3 turn, you usually have the choice of getting at least one of those guys. So I think the end of the year, seeing the AJ Brown versus Tyreek Hill versus Michael Pittman will be a good going back in our process type thing for the end of the year.
He has to be Theo. He has to be Harris, Najee Harris of last year, basically based on volume. Where if he's getting 13 targets like he got in week 1, fine, Pittman will give you the fantasy points. But if that offense doesn't turn around and he's not getting that volume, it's going to be sketchy for where you got.
Week 1, he got you 27 points, so you were feeling pretty good about that one.
13
he did help that the overtime as well.
My point is, though, that was on 50 pass attempts, and it's either are they going to have that like JD's saying, is that volume going to be? I think Pittman's a great player. I have a couple shares of him as well. I'm just we're talking Matt Ryan, so I want to just see everybody else's level of concern. It
looks like the offense has to run through JT to get some W's in Indy. That's what I'm seeing.
I feel the same way.
DJ Moore, staying at the wide receiver position. DJ Moore, Brandon Cooks, Hollywood Brown, Terry McLaurin, DK Metcalf, and Juju Smith-Schuster. All of these 4th and 5th round type wide receivers not named Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Jalen Waddle for that matter, are all kind of not necessarily busts, but none of them has made a big impact. DJ Moore caught a touchdown to save his week this past weekend. Brandon Cook saw another, I think he's got 20-something targets for the year, but hasn't really done a whole lot. Terry McLaurin, you guys alluded to before, has seen a dip in targets with Samuel getting overly targeted. DK Metcalf, a little bit of mixed bag, and Hollywood Brown's been just okay. Of these players, who are you most concerned about, and who do you think bounces back for you? Start with Michael on this one.
Yeah, so how crazy is it? And I don't know, I'm assuming, we all kind of had the same kind of thoughts and ideas, guys, we were trying to set up, at least in the NFFC KDS or where we want to draft. Literally, this is all we drafted in this range for the most part, right? This is what we wanted, wide receivers. And for the most part, so far, they've all been terrible, like you just said. It's amazing to me. And you didn't mention the Darnell Mooney's and
we can't talk about him. No, we're not going to talk about Darnell Mooney.
I was going to say the chat started talking Bears, and I'm like, don't even bring up the topic. It's
we already talked about Matt Ryan for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Let's not talk about the non-fantasy starters.
It's torture.
No Darnell Mooney. Don't even say his name.
It's just amazing to me though, that knowing that this is what all we wanted to do, right? And if this doesn't teach us a lesson, right, what we should do kind of in the future, it's when all else fails and there's questions about these guys, just take Patrick Mahomes, right? Just pass over these guys and take the elite quarterback. I mean, if this is what it's going to be every year, and I'm going to pull my hair out, listen, I'm drafting all these receivers and they suck, I'm not going to deal with it, right? You're going to have to change and adjust as you go forward, and that's just an example. Of that group, I would say, the one guy that at least started to look a little bit of the part, and maybe he just needed some time with the new team and everything, that I still have hope for, is Marquise Brown. They've just looked really bad, right? Kyler's looked terrible. The team's looked bad. I have hope for when Hopkins comes back. The schedule opens up for the second half, that offense can turn it around. Quite honestly, the rest of them, I don't know how much hope I have for all of them. They all have issues. They all have warts. Obviously, DJ Moore is probably has the most talent of the group, and I think he'll be okay. He always finds a way to get his 70 catches for 1,000 yards and 4 touchdowns. He'll do that, I'm sure. But the rest of the guys, I'm concerned about all of them, to be honest with you.
Oh, I got a big OTC, guys. Mooney, or Adam Thielen.
Adam Thielen.
Both guys in that round. I mean, it's.
Neither one of them, though.
That's what I'm saying. And
I think anybody still starting either one of those guys is just, that's not the right way to play fantasy. Let the situation change in Chicago before you're like a glutton for punishment. Justin Fields has, I believe, like 20 something pass attempts for the season. And Adam Thielen looks like, to me, he doesn't look as good as KJ Osborne when it comes down to it right now. So those guys are dust essentially until they prove it otherwise. What about you, Matt, with with this tier of guys who has kind of let us down?
I mean, I agree with Michael. There's some level of concern on all of them, and I agree about the Hollywood Brown comment that, I mean, if he gets in there when he got tackled on the 1 and gets a touchdown, that's 6 points. And then that 4th and 1 call where Kyler threw the bomb in OT and like he caught it and then he got popped by the safety. I mean, that was a hell of a hit, but you got to catch that ball in that moment. You know, that changes his day. That's like another 10 points right there. And so him, I would agree. I mean, DJ Moore, for me, is the guy I'm most invested out of this group. And, like, Matt Rule kind of needs to get fired. I mean, the way what's going on with CMC, like, if I was going to lose my job, and look, he's getting paid a lot of money, successful college coach, he'll get welcome back there in a heartbeat. But, you know, you got pride and you want to, like, you have CMC. And he's healthy right now. And how you not making him like the focal point? And for Robbie Anderson to be getting as many targets as a DJ Moore, I don't care. You have ties back from college or anything like that. I just don't get it. You know, I'm not a head coach. I don't pretend to be a scout or anything like that. But like, that's just obvious to me. Like, that's just poor coaching. That's not giving yourself the best chance to win.
Is he the first one fired, Matt, if it doesn't change?
I have to agree. I mean, this weekend is huge for them. I thought against the Giants, CMC was going to have a really big day. I expected DJ Moore to have a much better day. Like, why are we throwing this ball to Sills or whatever his name is? I know he dropped a wide open pass. It was the right pass at that time. But, I mean, that was just some bad football. I mean, even on the Giants side, too. I mean, they got lucky that, you know, they missed that 47-yard field goal in Tennessee. Or there would have been no dancing in that locker room. And I got a lot of Saquon, so I'm pulling for him, you know. But the Giants, how like Tony isn't the number 2 target on that team after like Saquon. Like, those 2 guys have to be the focal points. I mean, I don't get it. Put it that way.
29% target share for Sterling Shepard this weekend, Matt. That makes you, you know.
Well, yeah, so Shepard's the one guy that, I mean, it was just, was he back from the ACL that you knew he would get some, but for Tony to touch the ball like a couple of times a week, like especially when you saw in week 1 when they gave him the ball twice and they couldn't tackle him, he looked dynamic. I mean, and we saw flashes last year. I mean, he can't seem to stay on the field health-wise, but when he's healthy, I don't understand how you don't use these guys.
Dan, which of these wide receivers are you most hopeful for, and which are you most concerned about?
Well, I mean, you know, we probably saw this problem coming a little bit because we had about 36 wide receivers that were getting, you know, promoted as top 24 wide receivers. So, you know, just the simple math said some of these guys were going to fail. You know, and to me, that's part of the reason why we're probably taking a couple guys in that range is to try to make sure we get at least 1 hit, you know, and hopefully you get 2 hits. What you don't want to get is 2 that fail. I'm with what everybody has said so far. I'm most concerned about McLaurin probably. DK Metcalf a little bit as well, though I think it's too early to totally panic on him. Same thing with Juju. I mean, I think some of these guys might end up being all right. But McLaurin, with the way that offense is running, it just kind of seems like it's running a little bit more through the running backs and Curtis Samuel. And Jahan Dotson is starting to steal his thunder, too. So he's the one I'm most worried about.
And give me Hollywood Brown as well. I think that the Arizona offense, like, that Arizona offense, I think, is going to turn around. They've been so bad for the first half. 2 straight games. Kansas City game was a buzzsaw. And then Las Vegas, for whatever reason, that first half was just so bad. They have the Rams this week. I think that the Browns getting enough targets, and we believe in Kyler enough that I think that that's going to be the player I would bet on. And I might be most concerned about Juju, just based because I'm just not seeing it. I don't think that
I was just gonna ask Theo, to our guests, are we giving up on Juju, or have we just not seen how this new Chiefs offense is going to kind of develop? Because
not giving up. I mean, I think that you're just my expectations for him are closer to, I think that during the summer there was a narrative where he could be a top 15 wide receiver, and I think you really need to treat him as a wide receiver 3. He's attached to Patrick Mahomes, but I have concerns.
For me, just with that question, I wanted exposure to the Chiefs offense, and the 2 ways I got it, and I knew one of them was going to take some time, was Sky Moore at that price. I think he's the closest player on that roster. Obviously, he's green, but he's the closest thing to a Tyreek Hill element that they could put out there at some point. And the other guy was Jerick McKinnon, because to me, in the last 2 years, the Chiefs have looked the best when they had Damian Williams and when they had Jerick McKinnon in those 2 playoff runs. And those guys, I mean, look, he's gotten the points, he got the touchdowns. They just, like you said, buzzsaw with Arizona. But even this week, when he had that big run, it looked like he was holding a bread, running from a communist regime or something. He hadn't eaten in weeks, and he just made it through that hole. It was a hole, but it wasn't the most impressive one. I'll put it that way.
That was the ultimate example of ranting like you just stole something.
You need the GIF of the guy running with the big screen TV under his arm or whatever down the road. Yeah.
That's exactly it.
So one situation that's been alarming is the Kyle Pitts situation in Atlanta. He has 4 catches in 2 games. Arthur Smith seems like a moron. I don't know if you guys think differently, and maybe I shouldn't use that word, but that's just how he seems. And I hate the standoffish nature where he said he immediately deflects and says, I don't care about fantasy football after starting the year 0-2 and not getting his top 5 draft pick targets. Put aside the fantasy football thing, but I mean, the quote made me very angry.
That's the silver lining for me, though. That's actually the silver lining, like you said. He's not interested in fantasy football, and he's wanting to win, but his record is 0-2. You can say that if you're 2-0, and you say that, and you say, you know what? We're winning games here. Talk to me when we lose. So that's the optimism I have. And like I said, in the FFPC main event, I took Kyle Pitts in the first round, going for that tight end premium. I mean, I paired him with Saquon, but so far it's been a devastating 2 weeks, and there's nobody you're going to bench him for. I mean, I don't care. I have Gerald Everett's my most owned tight end, but if I have to, I'll put him in a lineup with him. I'm not sitting Kyle Pitts and then watching the 1 week where he goes off and snatches souls and he's on my bench. That's not going to happen. So I think the fact that they're 0-2 has to open the door to him getting more involved in actually getting, having it done. And Drake London blowing up, teams are going to have to focus more on him too. So I think it has to happen. At least that's what I'm going with. Put it that way.
Michael, talk me off the ledge. Like Matt, I also have an FFPC main event first round Kyle Pitts share that's not going so well at this point. What do you think? Are we seeing a bounce back soon?
Yeah, I mean, listen, Kyle Pitts is one of my highest owned guys. I mean, my whole New York Super draft strategy was centered around getting him at 3-1, right? So I have a partner that I split some of my or most of my NFFC teams with. His name's Scott Kaplan.
And Scott's very sharp as well. Shout out if he's listening. You're a very good player as well, Scott.
Yeah, and the one thing that he brings to the table for me, like I don't watch college football like at all. So and he's a Michigan alum, like a diehard college football everything. So he's the one I get the scouting reports from, right? And so like in most cases like I'll make all the draft decisions, but if he like pounds the table for a guy, like I listen. There and in the years we've been partners, there's been 3 times he's pounded the table. One time was for Patrick Mahomes in the year he broke out. The second time was last year for Jamar Chase. And the third time was this year for Kyle Pitts. And so far, it hasn't worked for Pitts, but I have to hope that it's going to come, right? He's a generational talent that I think at this point we have to hope it's the coaching staff and not the player, right? I was trying to watch the routes, right, a little bit on the game to kind of see, some of the routes actually, if you go back and look on some of the passes, like on the one Drake London touchdown and even on one of the other plays, they didn't even look right. They were like both running the same route. I don't know if you guys noticed any of this, but like Drake London and Kyle Pitts literally were running the same route. So I don't know if one ran the wrong route. Is Pitts doing stuff wrong? Is that why he's not getting the ball? Like I'm starting to wonder a little bit about that because some of those things don't look right when you actually look at some of the footage, but the talent's there and I still have hope from my standpoint.
And I think that he's still getting the slot snaps. He's still running the routes. So I think that we often see the squeaky wheel gets the grease type treatment. And I think that after 0-2, you could see him, come out and have a bounce back game this week. Dan, share your thoughts on Kyle Pitts. Please don't use the initials EE in your comparison for him as a player. Please don't. I can't hear it tonight.
Okay, I will definitely not say the Ebron word, but
oh my god,
I don't know. I'm letting the people who drafted Pitts worry about him. I got no concerns. I did get a couple full mo shares of Pitts, just to make sure I had some in my portfolio. But honestly, he's very young for a tight end still, and a lot of times tight ends it just kind of comes with actual physical maturity. So we'll see how it goes. I mean, I understand why the Falcons drafted him where they did. I don't understand why they're using him like they are. You just got to keep them in your lineup and hope it turns around.
Here's the ray of hope that I'll put out there. I tweeted out today. If you just look back to last year, and it's a different position and everything, but basically just the talent-wise of these players, like he's a generational talent and all that. After 3 games last year, Jonathan Taylor was being looked at as a first-round bust. I mean, people were angry. My partner in my home league was like, why the hell did you draft Jonathan Taylor? And I'm like, dude, chill. And did I know he was going to go on to be that? I hoped, but I was nervous at that point. And I'm not saying Kyle Pitts is going to do that, but you have to look at these things like the first 2 weeks. Like if we flip some of these weeks that happened, like after week 1, if JJ, who I think will end up as the wide receiver 1, Justin Jefferson, if he had that in week 2 and not week 1, you're looking at him totally different. After week 1, everybody's freaking out. Like, I just spent the top 3 pick or drafted him second. I took him over Cup. So, you have to try and have patience. If you built a good team and, you obviously don't want to fall too far behind, but that's the beauty of these points leagues. You need to be within range, and you're 200-point week away, and that guy getting 130 points, and that's a 70-point swing. I'm not saying that's going to happen every time for everybody, but I'm just trying to, show you how things can change rather quickly.
We have seen some successful tight ends in a range that was kind of interesting. There's Pat Freiermuth, Gerald Everett, Tyler Higbee are all off to very fast starts. Can these players maintain their success? Start with Michael on this one.
Yeah, listen, this is where we are with tight ends, right? If they score 10 to 12 points, we're like thrilled, right? So if that's what we're talking about, like in terms of success, I would think in this group, like Freiermuth's the guy that I believe in. I have some shares. I think he has some upside, some more upside there. And I think the other guys are serviceable, right? I think, I think when I hear these names, like that's what I think, right? I think 10 points, like 40 yards and a touchdown, like that's what you're looking for and hoping for from these guys. And in all honesty, like that could be tight end 5 this year. So, that's I think they can all continue to do it. But the one I have the most confidence in would be Freiermuth.
Can they do it based on their draft price? I think absolutely. Freiermuth, I think, regardless of the quarterback, is in a good situation. The guy I'm highest here. Look, Higbee should have had a touchdown last week, if not 2 of them. He got tackled on right before the goal line, and then he dropped one. But Gerald Everett, to me, he's the guy I have the most exposure to. He was that late round guy that I could get as my tight end 2. If I did like Freiermuth or Cole Clement, they're not throwing the ball in Chicago, so that's a 0. But Gerald Everett with that number 7 on and the way he's running, I'm very excited. Just having Herbert and being in that offense, I think gives him the advantage out of the 3.
Dan or JD?
Totally agree. I think Everett is the one. Outside of Freiermuth, it's probably going to go the farthest.
Yeah, like we're looking at targets, right? Higbee right now has got the most targets. He's averaging 10 targets a game. And then you got our boy Mandrews and then Freiermuth 3rd. So you're either looking at targets or red zone usage with these tight ends, right? That's basically what you want. And they're in good offenses other than Fry. I don't know if you want to consider Freiermuth in a good offense, but Higbee and Everett, not surprised. Everett was a guy we talked about often on the show. And then Higbee as well, just being part of that offense. And as he evolves with Matt Stafford having more stay in that offense, I think it's just natural for him to become more part of that offense.
For me, I love Freiermuth. That's anybody listening to the Goat District.
We know Theo. We know.
So I'm happy about Freiermuth, and I'm very very happy about teams I've drafted Gerald Everett on. Higbee, I think, will come back down to earth just because we've never seen him be able to do it for that long of a time. He had when his breakout was like a 6-game sample size. I just don't see it with Higbee. I think the other 2, you have to be feeling very, very good. How about we go a little bit deeper at tight end? Is there a late round or undrafted, when I say undrafted, they weren't drafted in the first 20 rounds, tight end that you could see sticking? I'll throw out a few names. Tyler Conklin, Hayden Hurst, Logan Thomas. A lot of those guys were on waivers to start out not FFPC, but a lot of those guys were on waivers to start out at FFC leagues. Which of those 3 are you most excited about? And do you see any of those 3 finishing as top 12 tight ends? Michael?
I think the only one of that group that could possibly do that is Logan Thomas, in my opinion. He's done it before. He's coming back from injury. We know he's a pretty good tight end when healthy. I'm not really interested too much in the other guys. They would be more kind of like just bye week replacement or injury guys for me that I would look at. The one guy that you didn't mention that interestingly enough, like he actually has more points than Kyle Pitts at this point, but is Isaiah
JD has more points than Kyle Pitts.
Is Isaiah Likely? Like I know like he's behind Andrews, but he did have 4 catches in this last game, and he's talented. And if anything were to happen to Andrews, like I think he'd be a smash. Like he's definitely someone that I'd keep my eyes on.
For me, I agree with Michael. It's Logan Thomas. We were excited for him not that long ago. The problem here with Hayden Hurst is I think they're going to need their tight ends to stay in here. Look, Joe Burrow's been sacked 13 times. This offense hasn't looked. Last year, the offense was kind of slow getting off the ground because he was coming off the injury. I think they got to stop with the shotgun. I think they're like 73% shotgun. And you can't just have these guys teeing off on you I think this line will gel. They got some good players in. It does take some time for an offensive line to gel, but I do think you need to get them under center. You have to have some play fakes in there or handoffs. You just can't, I don't think, every time just being sitting there because they're not getting blocked anyway. And Hayden Hurst can't be running out. I mean, in my eyes, I'm a big Joe Burrow guy. I think he's a buy low. I see all these articles. I never hear him being mentioned as a buy low. Like, this is when these are like real buy lows. When guys are well underperforming to what their like floor is, and they have like uber talents. Like, he has 2 wide receivers,
Especially in the first 3 weeks, man. Come on.
like that are all world, and they're going to figure this out. And so, I mean, I just don't see Hayden Hurst having that ceiling.
Yeah, Logan Thomas was tight end 4 overall 2 seasons ago, so he's got that pedigree. Dan, you love diving into the skanky tier of tight ends. You are the tight end whisperer.
He's a tight end whore.
There's no depths of the tight end position.
Bottom of the
Dan's
dumpster,
not willing
baby.
to go. So, who is there a very under the radar guy?
We're gonna call it the 2:30 a.m. tight end for Dan.
Yep.
It's Wednesday night at the bar. It's 2:30.
I got my tight end goggles
Which
on.
tight end are you going
You know
out with? Yeah.
Tight end goggles. That's a new shirt. Get the intern on it.
Yep, got to get the intern on that one.
I
I like Logan Thomas for sure. Conklin, I think, I thought Conklin was the better option than Uzomah the whole time. So I'm not even sure how much Uzomah coming back is going to affect that. But I like Evan Engram a lot too.
Yeah,
I think,
Ingram's right there. Yep.
Yeah, he's on an offense where Trevor Lawrence has used the tight end a lot in the past. We know that Doug Peterson, his offense features the tight end a lot. Evan Ingram's a guy who can, if he's used right, unlike what he was used by the Giants with the clapper, Jason Garrett, who could not figure out how to use Ingram at all. I think he's got a lot of skills. I mean, yeah, he drops a few balls, but you know what? You got to get thrown the ball to drop the ball. So I don't care.
Interesting about Ingram is he's at 6.7 yards per reception right now, which would be his career low. So I think that there's big games coming for him. Just a little positive regression, 1 or 2 big plays, but he's certainly seeing the routes run and the targets you want to see. So I think that's a great call by Dan. Okay, guys, we've reached that time of the show that we all prepared for. We're going to do our redraft top 5s at each position. Doesn't have to be a whole lot of context here. We're going to start out at the quarterback position. Tell me your top 5, and we'll go around the horn. Let's start out with Michael on this one. If you're drafting today.
Yep. This one probably the easiest one for me. I'd say it's Josh Allen 1, Mahomes is 2, Jalen Hurts is 3. Ooh. Then I would go with Herbert 4 and Lamar 5.
Yeah.
Matt.
Okay, we're going to be different here. I got Allen 1, but I got Lamar 2. I think this offense is really going to go. Hurts 3, Herbert 4, and Mahomes 5.
Interesting.
Dan.
I had the exact same order as Matt, except I had Mahomes and Herbert flipped. So I had Mahomes 4 and Herbert 5.
JD.
Allen, Jackson, Mahomes, Hurts, and then Murray and Herbert.
Okay. JD,
I have like the Allen and then like the second tier, and those guys are in my second tier.
That's fair. That's fair enough. And for me, it would be Lamar Jackson as QB1 overall. I think he showed us a little flash last weekend. I think the defense being bad is going to help it. Josh Allen is 2. Jalen Hurts is 3 for me. Patrick Mahomes is 4, and Herbert is 5. And I agree. I think Murray could jump into that.
You guys concerned about the ribs? Because I forgot about
Absolutely.
that. Yeah.
Absolutely concerned about the ribs. But I think that I think it's going to be a pain tolerance thing. He showed his toughness end of the game, and ribs are funny. Ribs end up being a pain tolerance thing. So this is the NFL. If anybody's seen Any Given Sunday, it goes down like that. So don't be too concerned about Herbert.
Intern James Woods.
100%.
Just find him a different doctor.
Dr. Harvey Mandrake. If any of the young kids haven't seen the movie, it's a classic. Matt, we'll start out with the running back position. Give us your top 5.
I mean, I do think there's a good possibility Swift could be one, but I'm pretty much going to stay with what I have here. What did I write down? CMC, JT, Swift, Barkley. And I mean, number 5.
5 is so hard. It's so hard.
I wrote down 3 guys. I mean, Dalvin Cook, because I think the offense is going to be really good. It could be him, Javonte, if they ever, gave it to him, or if the Browns ever went full Chubb. So I really don't know who 5 is. I threw 3 names in there.
Dan, who are your top 5?
I have JT first, Barkley second, Swift third, McCaffrey fourth, and for my 5th, I had a hard time with that one too, but I threw in Aaron Jones. I like the way he's being used in that offense.
JD.
Yeah, I had the same 4 as you guys, JT, CMC, Barkley, and Swift. I think it's too early to kind of, throw JT and CMC too far down the list. I still have them as my top 2 guys. I mean, Barkley sneaks in there. But same as Dan, I've got Jones right now in the 5 spot. But like Matt, I mean, that's when I messaged you guys, said it's tough decisions. Cook can easily slide in there. And like you said, Javonte getting more opportunity out there can easily climb in the top 5.
Michael.
Yeah, and I think it's similar. I think, we're all pretty much locked in on the same top 4, right? I didn't, at this point, I didn't change too much on what I thought like preseason. I still would have CMC, Taylor, Barkley, and then obviously Swift has moved up. So I think those are definitely the top 4. And honestly, for the 5th, like similar to Matt, I have 3 or 4 different guys circled and similar, some of the same names that he had. I don't think we can kind of discount Eckler yet either. I mean, the offense there is just too good. You just saw in the last week, he had 19 points, and what did he do? He did nothing. But I think Matt mentioned Chubb. I mean, I'm totally not a Chubb guy. I think I have a couple shares where I got him at.
You got a couple shares, Mike. You got a couple shares
at the end of the 4th round. Is where
I got him at 4-6.
Oh no, I'm a compliment to you with that one.
Yeah, but to me, it's what I've seen so far. I think he has a shot this year to pull off that Derrick Henry type year if they keep using him this way.
So I am, and I didn't rank him on this one, but I'll rank him now. I'll say Jonathan Taylor finishes as RB1 overall, Saquon 2, DeAndre Swift 3, CMC 4, and my RB5 was Mixon. I think he looks really, really good, and I think that offense is going to turn around in a big way, and he'll have his big weeks. Now we're going to move to the tight end spot. We'll start out with Matt on this one. Gerald Everett 1, and then who's 2?
I mean, it's Kelsey, Andrews, Pitts. I got to keep Pitts at 3. I got to believe that, after going 0-2, he sounded like a jackass, with that comment, the talent. 4 is Darren Waller. I mean, 5th for me would be Kittle if he can stay on the field. I mean, Kittle's a tremendous player. So, I mean, Kittle, I thought maybe Hawkinson had a chance before the season. But, I guess it's Kittle. If not, then Gerald Everett.
Dan.
All right. So I went Kelsey 1, Andrews 2, Waller 3. Going out on a limb a little bit, Kittle 4, and Goddard 5. And I left Pitts off just to own the rest of you guys.
Ice cold, Dan. That's absolutely ice cold. JD, give us your top 5.
It's Kelsey, Mandrews, obviously the top 2. And then again, I kind of feel like I have a tier here with Waller, Pitts, Kittle, and Goddard, and you can kind of shake them around as we go through these weeks. I'm like Matt, man. I'd love to see Kittle kind of stay healthy and get back to Kittle, and give us that kind of top 3 production. And you got to want to see Pitts, man. Give us something of what we drafted him for.
Michael.
Yeah, so similarly, I have, Kelsey and Andrews 1, 2. And honestly, I have a lot of Pitts, but my highest owned tight end is actually Dallas Goedert, and he was the one guy like I planted my flag on this year. I would probably put him 3 this year because he's just a stud. Like
so good.
He's awesome. I love seeing him run with the ball when they throw to him. So I'd say him 3. I'm still gonna throw Pitts 4, and then 5. It was kind of for me like a coin flip between Ertz and Freiermuth because I think they're getting the volume. I just don't know. Kittle's always hurt. Waller, I don't know what's going on there. So that's kind of what I went with there.
I'm going to go Kelsey, Mandrews. I'm going to say Pitts is resurgent and finishes as tight end 3 overall. Darren Waller at 4. And then I love Goddard as well, but I think it's going to be difficult for him with A.J. Brown crushing to crack the top 5. I'm going Pat Freiermuth as my tight end 5 overall. I think he's a stud. I think he's going to prove it this season. We're going to go to the wide receiver spot. This is a difficult one. We'll start with Michael on this one. Give us your top 5 wide receivers.
Yeah, this was a tough one, mainly because we're early in the season and there's been a lot of guys. Like I don't think I'm changing too much off of this. I think for sure, Cooper Kupp's definitely my number 1. I mean, he's without a doubt he's giving you like 30 every week. Like you can almost write it down. You're getting 30 from Cooper Kupp, right? Like what happened to Justin Jefferson this week not happened to Cooper Kupp. I mean, that's just my opinion on what I've seen. But I think, Kupp and Jefferson are definitely 1, 2. I think I have Diggs 3 right now. I'm still going to go Chase at 4. And then, at 5, there's a couple guys there. To me, it's really between Devontae. It's between Devontae and Tyreek for me at 5.
I mean, for me, Justin Jefferson was, I thought, going to be the number 1 receiver this year, maybe the number 1 overall fantasy player this year. I don't want to bail on that, but Michael makes the point. Like, Kupp is 30 points in the bank every week. So, whatever, 1, 2 for those guys. I think Diggs moves into the 3rd spot. And, like, it's still the top 5 for me with, like, Chase and Adams. But I really want to get St. Brown in there. Like, this guy is basically putting up wide receiver number 6 every week. So it's going to be the top 5 with St. Brown knocking on the door. I'm not going to change off of the way it started off. But, I mean, I don't think there's been anybody. St. Brown's like basically becoming a Cooper Kupp.
Dan?
All right, I went Kupp number 1. It hurt to do it, but I had to put Diggs over Justin Jefferson, so I have Diggs 2nd. You can just ask him; he's him. And the guy looks back. He looks healthy, and both Kupp and Diggs have better quarterback situations, I think, than what Justin Jefferson has. Not that I'm down on Cousins, but he can have the occasional bad game, and that definitely hurts Jefferson. Then it got really tough after that. I went ahead and put Amon-Ra St. Brown at 4 and Chase at 5. I'm a little bit more worried about the Bengals offense, and it seems like Detroit has things figured out. I'm not that worried about Jameson Williams coming back. And then I've got the 2 Miami receivers at 6 and 7, Tyreek and Waddle.
So for me, it's Kupp, then Jefferson, then Diggs. And I think that all 3 of them are going to average 25 points per game or more. I think it's going to be a record year. I think all 3 of them are going to just smash. 4 for me is still Chase. I think that the monster games are coming for Cincinnati. I think they'll turn that around. And then wide receiver 5 for me, like you guys, was very difficult. I wanted to put Jalen Waddle here. I wanted to put Amon-Ra St. Brown here. But I'm going to go Devontae Adams. I think he's the focal point. He's done it before. And I think it's going to be easy to predict his targets week in, week out. So that's my my top 5 there. This was a lot of fun.
What about my top 5? What? Nobody wants to hear my top
JD, I apologize. I'm sorry. Go ahead with your wide receivers. I was going to get the league winners.
Kupp, Diggs at 2, Jefferson at 3, Chase, one of the top 3 targeted right now at receiver, and then I go Tyreek Hill and AJ Brown. Again, Tyreek Hill at top 3 in targets. Targets is huge for me. at the position. So I got to have Chase, Hill, and Cup as the top 3 targeted receivers in my top 5.
There you go. I think we're pretty close on that. Like everybody had the top 3, and then it gets a little different. So that was actually really fun with these. The last question, since we're at $1.30. We went over as
we always do
with you guys. Last year we saw Cooper Cup teams, Mark Andrews teams, Jamar Chase teams really crush leagues. We saw Billy Wazowski win with some of those guys. We saw in the FFPC main event, the Go Bills guys, shout out to them. They took down with a couple of those guys. Who are your league winners? You can give me 1 name, you can give me 2 names, you can give me 3 names. Who are the guys that are going to be on the rosters for teams that win at the very end of the season in these major tournaments? Start out with Matt.
I'll give you 3. The definite number 1 for me, I'm still going with, is J.K. Dobbins. I'll go with the Sun God, and Kyle Pitts will eventually get people. You can get there. He's going to win it for you. I mean, you got to get
Talking into existence, Matt. Talking into existence. Dan, who you got?
All right, I've got Amon-Ra St. Brown is definitely the number 1. I struggled to find anybody who I'm believing in a lot as being a league winner, as in somebody who's coming, like out of the top, not in the top 3 rounds, basically. But Jalen Waddle's probably that guy too. If anything happens to Tyreek Hill, he would be monstrous. And maybe even if nothing happens to Tyreek Hill, he could still be monstrous. And for my waiver wire pickup of the year, so far I'm thinking it's probably Curtis Samuel. That guy's doing it all. So I think he could definitely be on a lot of championship rosters.
JD?
Yeah, I mean, now that Dan's kind of set the line at 4th round or later, I mean, obviously the Sun God is definitely in there. I think Etienne still has a chance, like we talked about. Let the cream rise to the top there, and maybe he still gives you the boost. Pitts is always a guy that we hope and believe that he'll come out of this and take some to the promised land. I'll throw Bateman in there. We see Lamar Jackson just crushing on a weekly basis. You think Bateman's got to follow along the ride, and as someone going in the 5th round, around guys like we talked about, Mooney, Thielen, guys like Metcalf getting passes from Geno Smith. I like Bateman's chances as someone that rises out of that round.
Michael, who are your league winners?
Yeah, so I mean, I think some of the ones, I think I agree with Dan on Amon-Ra and Waddle. I think those are kind of like right now, at least in like that 4th round range, what we would think. Another guy kind of a little bit later in that wide receiver tier that actually is hitting, which probably, like, he literally was the last guy, at least in my kind of cutoff, was Christian Kirk. I think he's going to be there all year. And two guys who maybe haven't hit yet that I think will make an impact. One is Javonte Williams. I think by the end of the year, he's going to be the guy. And a San Francisco 49er running back will be involved by the end of the year and will do something, especially with Garoppolo, the quarterback now.
How about Jimmy G and Superflex, baby? Oh, yeah. Love it.
There you go, America. NFFC Hall of Famer Michael Edelman is calling Marlon Mack his league winner this year.
Damn.
For me, it's I'll stick with my QB1 overall. Lamar Jackson teams are going to do quite well. I will say Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jalen Waddle, based on where they were drafted and where they're going to finish, which is going to be top 7 wide receivers. And then my sneaky one is A.J. Dillon. I think he's going to keep emerging down the stretch. Big week 1, slow week 2, but I think he's an absolute beast, and I think they know how to use him when they need him. So this was just awesome tonight. Really appreciate your guys' time. This was really, really fun to do this ranking to end it.
I had a great time, man. It's always a blast coming on the GOAT District. I want to thank you guys. I think you put on a hell of a show. Just the guests you have on throughout the year, especially like prepping it up and that. It's a fantastic time. Always great being on with Mike. And, thanks again.
Yeah, same here.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Theo, it's been a pleasure kind of getting to see you in New York and Vegas the last couple of years, and Dan, and got to talk to you a little bit out in Vegas too. Maybe one day we'll get you out there, JD.
We'll 2023, baby. I'm crossing the border. Now, guys, this has been awesome. Apologies for the technical difficulties to our guests and to the listeners. If you're new to the channel, guys, this is just where the best players on the planet in fantasy football come to hang and talk about their goatness, their strategies, their tricks and tips. So hang with us, guys. Hopefully we're helping you win your leagues. If you've been with us, for a while now, we appreciate all the support. You guys have been awesome, man. Like the comments on YouTube, keep dropping them. Smash the likes, the subscribe, share the show. We're at what, 550 subs on YouTube, Dan. We wanted to get to 500. You guys got us there real quick. So help us get to 1,000 now. We want to double that. Share it with a friend. If each of you share it with one person, you're helping us more than you can ever imagine. So we appreciate all your support. Check out our partners in the links below, guys. The FFPC, myffpc.com. All of us play there. They've got every format. You can still draft on there right now, probably. And Underdog as well on a weekly basis. You can use the code district, get up to $100. Guys, this was a blast. Thursday, Theo, what do we have coming up for tailgate before the game?
Pat Fitzmaurice from Fantasy Pros, who's is just a great listen to and a great follow. He's joining us for another tailgate. We're doing a lot of these tailgates this year. As you're getting ready for Monday night and Thursday night games, join us in the district.
Come hang with us before the game, guys. Thanks for hanging in with us tonight. Good luck in week 3, and we'll check you all later.
Go district, the Pope listens. Dynasty, our religion, for the blokes missing. On all of these trades, on all of these plays, on all of these grades. By the end of the day, y'all getting played. So, what you gonna do next? Try to fill up that flex? Send the homie a text. That trash offer's the best. You try to make it complex, then they text you back. Now all of a sudden, they don't make any sense. Broaden your horizons, boy. Dynasty's not for the Simons, boy. These trades not for consignment, boy. Respect your opponent, y'all some piranhas, boy. This my advice from me to you. Open up your cute little podcast queue. Search up GOAT District, my dude. Pop it in your ear, man. Y'all know what to do. And I always be traded. And I always be traded. And I always be trading. Y'all try to betray them, but first you gotta bait them. Fish.